Hey Josh, can you hear me?
Can hear you just fine.
Awesome. All right. So excited to have you with me here, Josh Steimle. Steimle as we would say in German. Um, Josh, you are a digital PR pro. We go way back. We'll talk about that in a second. Why don't you briefly introduce yourself to our audience today?
Sure thing. Thanks for having me, Chris. So introduction. Uh, I've run a digital marketing agency most of my life, started in 1999, 2013. I got into writing. I was blogging before that, but then I got invited to write for Forbes magazine, and that led to opportunities to write for about 24 publications. So from 2013, 2016, I wrote a couple hundred articles for Forbes, Time, Inc., Fast Company, TechCrunch, Mashable, just any place I could get into. And that's how I learned the PR game. And then I went over to the dark side and started playing PR with all the contacts I had made writing for these publications and the experience. And here we are. We're talking about it.
Awesome. Hey, why don't you, so John, it's so great to reconnect and have you finally on my podcast. So to kick things off for those who may not be, who may don't know what digital PR is, could you explain it to us in very simple terms? How do you explain it to your mom or your grandmother?
There are different ways to understand digital PR. The easiest way is just to say, well, it's PR on websites instead of in paper publications. And so that's one aspect of digital PR, but it's different because people tend to have different goals with digital PR. When they're getting into a paper publication or a newspaper, they're generally looking to boost their credibility, to get some sort of marketing hit from it, which you also are doing with digital PR. But with digital PR, you're also tying in search engine optimization and some other factors.
So we do, in fact, we do a lot of digital PR. We do it mostly for SEO purposes. So we'll talk more about how a real pro is doing digital PR. Also, there's a different price tag attached to if somebody wants to work with you, right? Versus if an agency is doing digital PR primarily for SEO. So we'll come back to that. So why is digital PR particularly important for businesses in today's online landscape? And what kind of goals can it help them achieve? Like, what's the big picture? If what would be a sales pitch? Obviously, we don't want to make this a salesy podcast, but how would you sell this to somebody out there that could benefit from what you do?
The people who are investing in digital PR are typically doing it for one of three reasons. Number one, it's credibility. So that's part of it. And you can get that whether it's digital or print PR, like we just talked about. But credibility is one factor. They want to be seen in certain publications because it's going to help them with their audience to be seen as more credible or as an authority or an expert in their space. The second reason is exposure. So they're looking to grow their brand. They want people to have heard of them, and they just want people to know that they exist. And the third one goes to more of the technical side of things, which is search engine optimization. You're looking for an SEO boost, and you feel that digital PR is a way that you can get those backlinks, the high credibility stuff that is going to boost your profile in the search engines. And more recently, this is leading to AI optimization as well, that people see that these publications are a way to get noticed in ChatGPT and other AI platforms because those platforms are going out and looking through public information, and that helps you to be seen in those places.
Yeah, awesome. And we'll talk about EEAT a little bit later on, and maybe even AI a bit more. But so as mentioned earlier, we go way back. Even like we hosted a full day SEO and digital PR workshop together in London, I think back in 2018. that's a lifetime ago, right? So
Pre-COVID. Yeah.
how has the world of digital PR evolved since then, especially from your perspective running Canvas PR now?
Two of the larger shifts that I've seen with digital PR is number one, some of the players have changed. A lot of websites, outlets that were seen as very credible and were kind of the high flying publications out there now have kind of faded and they're just not what they used to be. I mentioned Mashable was one of the outlets I used to write for, and Mashable was the hot thing back during the 2010s.
Yeah.
And now it's like, I think most of the kids have never heard of Mashable. I think a lot of adults haven't heard of Mashable. So it's kind of like it's still there, but it's not what it used to be. And even Forbes. Forbes used to be a huge, huge top tier publication. And their reputation has kind of gone downhill, I'd say, in the last 6, 7 years. And so that's kind of shifted. You just see different publications are thriving and different publications are struggling. And the other side of it is on the SEO front. It used to be that before all these publications really understood the SEO game, they would just, you could get in an article, you could get a link, it was a followed link. And several years ago, all the publications went unfollowed with the links. But at the same time, we also have seen that unfollowed links are not necessarily ignored links by Google. And so even an unfollowed link in these publications still carries some value, can still impact rankings. But that's been kind of a game that's been shifting over the past several years to see whether these links were any good or not, or what was the deal as far as how Google recognized them.
Yeah, so on that note, so Google filed a patent, probably like 3, 4 years ago, the brand mention patent, where so Google, they created the biggest problem by relying on backlinks. That was the first and only ranking signal, right? So they're still dealing with that problem, but they're getting better at, recognizing brand mentions, even if there's not a link underneath that brand. Like, actually, I do have a follow-up question on that. Like, is that even if you're not able to get a backlink in one of the publications that your client wants to get, does that still work for them? Or tell us a little bit more about link versus no link but mention.
So Google's always changing things, right? So there are people who are doing experiments with this type of stuff and trying to figure out exactly what happens. And that's always changing, though. But think about it from Google's perspective. If you're in a Forbes publication, your company is mentioned in Forbes on Forbes.com, whether it's a link or whether it's a brand mention, it would be foolish of Google to not consider that as a ranking signal or as some sort of signal for credibility on Google's platform. So now, are they going to treat that equally? Well, I think one of the challenges they run into is a brand mention is not always a slam dunk in terms of recognizing that it's a brand mention. There are companies, I deal with this, my marketing agency, MWI. There are 50 other companies out there called MWI. So if you see MWI on Forbes.com, is it my company? Is it somebody else's company? If it's linked, you know exactly which company it is. If it's not linked, you have to pick up on the context, and that might not always be feasible. So there are some technical challenges with simple brand mentions. In some cases, it's easy, but in other cases, it can be a challenge. And so, but if I'm sitting in Google's shoes and I'm saying, hey, my goal is to get people onto Google, searching and getting good results that they're happy with so they come back, of course, I'm going to take into consideration linked brands, unlinked brands. I'm going to use all the information I have at my disposal to impact that. And a brand mention, whether it's linked or not, is still a signal that this company is credible and they're getting press and they're recognized, they're alive. And so I'm going to use that data to inform my algorithm.
Awesome, awesome. Let's switch gears a little bit. So, drawing from your extensive experience writing for major publications, like you mentioned, Forbes and Inc., you've seen countless PR pitches, I bet. Can you pull back the curtain a little bit on what you call the pitcher's graveyard and share like the most common reasons why PR pitches fail to grab a writer's attention?
When I was writing for these publications, I mean, you said countless. Literally, it was countless, but I tried counting a couple of times. There were months I got over 1,000 pitches, and it was impossible for me to even glance at a handful of these pitches. There were just so many that I just learned how to identify them quickly and ignore them. And the reason I ignore them is when I was new to the game and I was started receiving the pitches, I thought, oh, well, maybe these would be helpful for me, and maybe there are good people out there that I could interview. And as I started getting more and more of the pitches, I realized, no, this is just spam. I'm just nobody's pitching Elon Musk or Richard Branson or Oprah to me. They're pitching me people I've never heard of that I would have to go do due diligence on and figure out, is this a good person? Is this not a good person to include? And it was just so much email that I had to learn how to filter those things out. However, some people were able to break through, and the people who broke through were the people who didn't send me the same thing that everybody else sent. And the thing that everybody was sending was, hey, I'm representing such and such CEO from such and such company. He would love to talk to you on such and such topic. That's what I got 1,000 times a month. And so that's what I learned how to ignore. The pitch that really got through to me was when, and this was so rare, but every once in a while somebody would send me something and say, hey, how can I help you? What are you looking for? What do you need? What articles are you working on? And if it started out that way, then it was, well, that's different. Nobody ever asks me what I'm working on. And then I might respond and say, well, here's what I'm working on. I've got these 20 articles that I'm on deadline for. I need these types of sources. Do you know anybody? And sometimes they'd say, well, hey, I'm that person for this article, or I know somebody for this article. Well, now we have a relationship, and now we're talking, and they're giving me value first rather than just asking and trying to take. And so those were the pitches that got through. And that's what I started doing when I got on the PR side was, instead of just saying, hey, I've got this great person you should talk to, it was, what are you working on and how can I help? And that got me through to people at the New York Times, at the Wall Street Journal, at so many publications, because it was different from what they were used to receiving.
Interesting. So that was actually my next question, but you already answered it. Awesome. So, so your model at Canvas PR, it's quite different from traditional digital PR retainers, I believe. So focusing on flat fee, basically guaranteed placements, often as expert quotes or mentions. So what led you to develop this specific PR vending machine approach, and what is it best suited for?
So when I started working on the PR side of things, I recognized there were three problems with traditional PR. And the way traditional PR works is that these older, more established, larger PR firms, they have connections. They know people at these publications, but they also do a lot of pitching. And so what they would do is they'd sign up a client, they go through some strategy sessions for a month or two, a lot of discovery, a lot of research, a lot of strategy, figuring out where do we want to be, where do we want to get you, what kind of stories are we looking for. And then they start sending out pitches, and they typically will send lots of pitches out to lots of outlets. And then they're kind of beholden to whatever comes back, whoever responds. And so with a traditional PR approach, you don't know where you're going to get that PR. So if you're the client, you might end up on TV, you might end up in a print article, you might end up in an industry publication. You don't know exactly where you're going to be. You have a strategy, so you're targeting certain types of publications, but you might get lucky somewhere, you might not get lucky. So typically, you don't know what you're going to get from your PR firm. You know you'll get something, but you don't know exactly what you're going to get. The other side of it is you don't know when you're going to get it. You might get something this month, next month, in 3 months, maybe in 6 months. And you also don't know what you're going to pay for what you're getting because you're paying a retainer. So you might be paying on the bottom end $5,000 a month. If you're hiring a New York City high-end PR firm, you're paying $50,000 a month. So you're paying this retainer. And if you ask the PR firm, how many articles do I get for this? They'll say, well, we don't know. We're going to do a lot of pitching. We'll see what comes back. And so the story that I heard over and over from PR clients was, I hired this New York City PR firm. I paid them 20 grand a month. And after 9 months, I had one article and I didn't like that article. And so they paid 180 grand for this one article that they didn't even like. And so I thought, there must be a way to solve this problem. And what we figured out is, hey, if we get to know a writer at a publication well enough, then we can go to them and we can get pre-approval on articles. So we can basically go to them and say, hey, we've got this client that we think you'd be interested in. What if we wrote a story about XYZ topic? Is that something that you'd be willing to take a look at and maybe publish? And the writer would say, hey, Josh, I know you. So yeah, I trust you. That sounds like a good article. Sounds like a fit for me. Sure. If you come to me with an article about that, I'll take a look at it. Over time, this evolved into, we just started writing articles for these writers. And they started coming to us and saying, hey, we're super busy. Do you have any articles that would be a fit for my column? And so we got into a position where we knew the writers so well and what they were looking for and the format that that publication needed that we could guarantee placement in that publication if we brought them the right article. So essentially, we could go to a client and say, look, you want to be in Forbes? We know 30 writers at Forbes. We can guarantee that you'll get placed there or your money back. And there's a difference between a guarantee and a promise. A promise is we are going to get you into this publication. A guarantee is we're going to get you in or else we're going to do something like give you a refund. And so we started offering refunds and saying, hey, we'll get you into Forbes or you get your money back. And based on our experience, we knew that we could guarantee that within 90 days. Most of our placements go live within 30 to 60 days. So the offering we came up with, it solved these three problems in the PR industry. Number one, you don't know what you're going to get. Well, people could just choose. They could look at a list of the publications where we had relationships and say, I want one Forbes article and 2 articles in Inc. and 3 in Fast Company, and we could deliver that. Second, they knew what they were going to pay because instead of charging a retainer, we started charging a flat fee. And so we could say, hey, a Forbes article is going to be 3 grand, an Inc. article is 5 grand, Fast Company's 7 grand, whatever. And so they knew exactly what they were paying for what they were getting. And then we were guaranteeing it within a 90-day turnaround. So they also knew when they were going to get it. So they knew what they were going to get, how much it was going to cost, and when they were going to get it. And so that's solving those 3 problems of traditional PR. I think there's still obviously a great place for traditional PR. That's just the niche that we chose to focus on.
Yeah, no, I think it's brilliant. I mean, it's very different than other digital PR firms. By the way, so I'm going to put the link to your website, canvaspr.com, below in the description field if you're watching this on YouTube. Yeah. What's the, just very briefly, average spend per client per order? Or just briefly tell us the pricing.
Uh, we have a lot of lower tier publications that are really affordable, but I would say the average is probably around 2 to 3,000 per placement. We have some that are really expensive too. If you want to get into Vogue or some of the high-end fashion magazines, then we've got $60,000 articles to get you in there, like multi-page spreads and stuff. But if you want to get into Forbes is our most popular still. And Forbes, that's going to run you 3 to 5,000. Ink's another popular one. That's going to run you 4 or 5,000. Fast Company's pretty popular. A little bit harder for us to get people in, so we charge a little bit more for that. So it might be 6 or 7,000. But on average, people are paying probably around 3 grand per placement. And but the client, it's different for every client. Some clients come and they say, hey, I just need one article in this publication. Other clients are coming in and saying, I just launched a new company. I want that banner on my website that says as seen in, and I need 10 logos to go down there. How
Yeah.
quickly can you get me 10 different media logos? So everybody's got different reasons for investing in digital PR. And A lot of our people are just one-offs, but every once in a while somebody comes and gets like a big package.
Okay, awesome. So talking about benefits of digital PR, for businesses and individuals, what are the real benefits of securing these types of media mentions besides the banners and placements? Beyond just getting a backlink, how do they contribute to credibility, authority, and crucially important EEAT signals? So now we're looping back into SEO, right? Besides the obvious benefits, talk a little bit more about, what we do here. SEO. EEAT stands for experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness.
hmm So it's if if you go, so there are different places you can utilize these placements. And we always tell clients, like, we don't really focus on the SEO side of it. Maybe we should focus a little bit more on it, but we really focus on the credibility and the marketing aspect of it. So what we tell clients is, hey, if you're going to go for investment funding, your investor is going to want to see that you've got some press and that it's recent and that it's relevant to your industry and what you're doing. So we can help you with that. We can get you into a bunch of publications over a period of 2 or 3 months. And then when you go in to pitch your investors, you've got some fresh press to show them to say, hey, look at some of the things people are saying about us recently. And that can impress and help with the investor. It's similar with clients in that if you have a press section on your website, then if a client goes there and they see a bunch of posts from 3 or 4 years ago, then it's kind of like, well, what have you done lately? Are you still alive? Are you going downhill? Clients want to go into that press section and see that there's fresh press there as well. And just to show that you're alive and that you're doing stuff and that people care. And it makes you look bigger if you get this press. If your company is seen in Forbes Inc. Success Entrepreneur, then clients look at that and they're like, oh, this company seems legit. They seem real. They're getting this press and these real publications. We also see a lot of people publishing this on LinkedIn on their profiles to say, hey, I was quoted in Forbes, and they put that on LinkedIn, and then people see that. That helps establish their authority as a thought leader or a person of influence in their space. So that's typically how we see people leveraging these articles for the benefit of their companies or themselves.
Okay, very cool. So given the rise of AI, it's happening, it's changing every industry. So the rise of AI in content creation, have you seen any impact on the types of pitches writers receive or the way publications work with external contributors? How is AI impacting the digital PR industry?
Well, as we record this, everybody's trying to figure this out, right? But if you go to ChatGPT or any other AI, you're going to see that if you ask a question, typically it's going to give you its own explanation. And then under that, it's going to show you the sources for where it got that information from. And again, I like to talk about it's the whole Wayne Gretzky thing about going to where the puck's going to be rather than where it is. What does ChatGPT or any AI platform want? They want to keep you on the platform. They want to give you results that you like. And so they have an incentive to source their information from credible sources. And if you look at the New York Times or Forbes or Time Magazine or any of these well-known publications, those are highly credible sources. So of course, the AI platforms are going to mine those sources, at least whatever they can mine. And there are a lot of these AI platforms that are forming agreements with these publications so that they can actually mass process all their content in real time. So these AI platforms are going to turn to highly credible platforms like these publications to source information. And if you're in those publications, that's good for you. It means you're going to show up in results that are shown on ChatGPT and other AI platforms. I mean, it's really the same game that Google search was playing. It's just AI now instead of search.
Yeah, I mean, we do it when we do digital PR for every client in some form or shape, right? And it's just we see it helps get into these AI overviews, Google AI overviews, and soon they're going to be called, was it AI mode? Yeah. So I completely agree on that. So for our audience members or listeners who might be looking to improve their own digital PR efforts or pitching, what's one key piece of advice you'd give them? When does it make sense to try a do-it-yourself approach versus working with, somebody like Canvas PR?
So I talked a little bit earlier about pitching and the way that I recommend pitching, which is reaching out to a journalist and saying, how can I help? What are you working on? And then seeing if there's a good fit. I still think that's a lot of work. And so if it were me, I would go to featured.com. I'm not an affiliate. I don't own the business, but I just think they're a great platform. I've used them a bunch. And featured.com is kind of like the new Haro or Help a Reporter Out that we
They
used to use a
actually
lot back in the
they
day.
purchased the horror website. Horror, yeah. Did you see that?
I didn't
It
see
just,
that, but that's a good
it
move for them.
just happened. Yes, I'm actually very excited about that. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, so featured.com, they publish opportunities. So if you go on featured.com, you can sign up. I think there's like an entry free account that gives you like 2 responses or 3 responses a
Yeah.
month, or you can pay $100 for unlimited responses. But essentially, you log in and it says, here are a bunch of articles that writers are working on. If you are a good source for one of these articles, then you can fill out your little pitch and say, here's what I think about this topic. They'll ask you questions, you just answer the question, and then you can end up in all sorts of news outlets. And for $100 a month, you cannot beat the value that you get from featured.com. It's really an amazing tool where people might still come to a canvas is if they want a little bit more of a sure thing. The thing with featured is you can answer 10 questions and get nothing, or you could get 5 articles. You just don't know exactly what you're going to get. Whereas if you say, hey, I'm on deadline, I need 10 articles in the next 3 months, and I have to get these 10 articles, that's when you might come to a canvas and say, hey, what can you do for me? What can you guarantee within the next 3 months? Also, budget's a consideration. Canvas is considerably more expensive than Featured's $99 a month.
So we do have a component, digital PR component that includes us managing featured, right? And there's no guarantee to and how many publications our client's going to show up, but the guarantee is that we're going to submit to all these publications. And then we see a pretty decent return on investment. And especially with us, we do it for me a lot, right? And because I'm known in this industry, been doing this for 30 years now. So I get picked up and man, it is worth the time and effort to do so. Yeah, I couldn't agree more there. So, Josh, already my last question here. So, looking ahead, how do you see the digital PR landscape continue to evolve, and what should businesses be focusing on to earn valuable media coverage in the coming years?
I think, like Jeff Bezos said, focus on the things that don't change rather than the things that change. And I think what's going to be consistent is people want stuff or people need help with solving problems. That's something that never changes. People want to rely on credible sources of information about where to buy stuff or what stuff to buy or how to solve their problems. That's not going to change. And so I think there's a long pipeline of people trusting large top tier publications because they do have credibility. I mean, a lot of them have kind of shot themselves in the foot in terms of credibility over the past many years, but still, the New York Times is still a very credible publication, and I think they'll remain so for decades to come. I think Forbes is still has a lot of credibility, will remain so. So these top tier brands, I think, are going to stick around for a long time to come. They're not going to be replaced by bloggers. They're not going to be replaced by AI. They're still going to be seen as reputable and credible. And as long as that exists, then information from those publications is still going to show up in search engines. It's going to show up in AI. And so getting PR in these places is still going to be valuable. And AI, I don't think is going to replace journalism anytime soon. I think it's already supplementing it quite a bit. It's helping good journalists become better, and it allows these publications to weed out their worst journalists because now the good ones can produce more. But I think that's just going to help the publications become more credible in the long term. So I still think it's worth it for companies and individuals to invest in the PR because the credibility and showing up in the results where people are looking for it, which has been traditionally search engines for the past 20, 25 years. Now it's moving a lot over to AI, and you're going to get search results there too from these publications. So I would still be investing just the same way as before. I'd still be pitching. I'd be using featured.com. I'd be getting into these publications any which way. I don't think the game is really changing on the PR front all that much. Other than that, your results are going to be seen in different places.
Awesome. Cool. Hey, Josh, a couple of rapid fire questions for you. So just answer, very quickly. So can people get to know you a little bit more personal. Uh, Indian or Chinese food?
I lived in China, so I love Chinese food, but I also love Indian food. So I think I'll go with Indian. That's
Oh,
what I'm in the mood
awesome.
for
All
today.
right, cool. Interesting. Surfing in the ocean or skateboarding?
Skateboarding. I'm a skater, so
All right. Mountains or beach vacation?
mountains for sure.
Oh,
Not a
nice.
huge fan of sand. I
Awesome.
love the beach, but just the sand. I love the
Yeah.
mountains.
And last, cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Awesome.
No
Cool.
explanation needed.
Well, hey, Josh, thank you so much. It was awesome to catch up with you. It's a great interview. Maybe we can do this again in a year, see how things have evolved. Yeah, if anybody wants to reach out to you, we'll put the link to the website Canvas PR below in the description field of the YouTube video if you watch this on YouTube. As always, stay safe and healthy. Until next time, Josh, thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Chris.